Welcome to the guest show. Yes, you can see my good looks and my guest, Matt Hatton's good looks. Today, yes, I have Matt Hatton on the line to talk about, I would say, something he believes in. We've had a brief discussion about it before. We've had several discussions about it. So, Matt, why don't you tell me more?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on your podcast, Ian. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I'm speaking to you, I guess, Ian, because for 14 years I was the CEO of a small, medium-sized homeless charity. And in 2021, after a fulfilling career, I basically burnt out quite savagely. And as a result of that, plus personal circumstances where I had to leave my home, I was experiencing domestic abuse. Um, those two things combined meant that, um, I had effectively a breakdown. So from that, I needed to mend, recuperate, recover, and then rediscover myself. And I guess from that, I went in a new direction, which was to train as a life coach, and that's where my focus has been. So then, at the beginning of this year, having spoken to quite a few people in the homeless sector, I thought that there was still something more that I could offer the homelessness sector, and that is to work with people who may be feeling as though they're close to burnout. And the more that I did my research, and you like your fact checking, I know, Ian, the more I realised that this was a big thing throughout the country in the workplace, but particularly in the homelessness sector. So yeah, now I'm working with people who are facing burnout in the homelessness sector. And the reason why I think this is really important is just like you yourself have experienced homelessness. It's really important that if someone goes to a charity in housing crisis, that they're working with a frontline worker or whoever they're seeing who's in a good place themselves.
I'll tell you a story. You should have been. The hostel I attended was what they call a wet hostel. For
Mm-hmm.
those who don't know, that's a place where people drink. I don't drink. Okay, I'm 69 now. I get alcohol at 21 for reasons. It wasn't because I was alcoholic. It was just lose weight. But I do remember the people who inducted me, the work I didn't. They're like everywhere, good workers. And the guy who inducted me, the way he was going like a robot, the other guy with him was sleeping while the induction was going on. And as I'm, and he got worried about me. I said I was a youth worker. I think he heard social worker. But I do remember this particular guy, one down the room, like there were two television rooms. Most of them were in that one, and I went in another one because I didn't drink. That's all. And also I could see what I wanted. I remember seeing him doing a room check, and he's got his MP3 headphones in his ears. Yeah, I'm thinking, you're not professional, mate. You know. But then I used to go out most of the days to places, come back one evening. This particular gentleman had chucked one of the residents down, had threatened to chuck one of the residents down the stairs. And one of the most popular workers in St. Mungo's was working there. And he threatened to hit her. Another guy, another worker got away. And of course, he disappeared, you know. Now, I think he would have needed your sort of help.
Yeah, I mean, with all the people that you've met, I mean, it's a tough gig
Mm.
working in the homelessness sector. Let's face it, and you have to have a passion for wanting to do that kind of work. And you are going to come up against lots of conflicts, lots of issues, no matter where you are in the kind of hierarchy of the organization, it's different. But as a frontline worker, definitely. And there's a certain amount of vicarious trauma that you carry as well. And I think it's really important that in whatever way you are able to unload, and that unloading, it needs to happen in the workplace with your colleagues, the people they work closely with who understand, and there's ways to unload outside of work as well.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. And so the experiences that people have, and you talk about, someone who might be unprofessional, I don't think that's excusable. I think there needs to be professionalism at all times, and the experience that people have when they are in housing crisis, they need to get a premium service. To have a premium service, you have to have staff that are in a good place, and that's what I'm interested in, making sure that homelessness charities have staff that they can keep, that they can retain, who feel cared, who feel loved for themselves, and who are in a good place.
Let me, because you want to take a back step. We all hear about this phrase, life coaches. What is a life coach?
Yeah, well, the actual phrase life coach, probably myself, although I've qualified as one, it's a term which is really quite difficult to really put a definition on it. I mean, coaching in itself, you immediately think, well, for your sins, you're a Spurs fan, I know, but you automatically think about
sport. Be intelligent, you see, that's why.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you think of sports coaching.
Yeah.
And that's where it, stems from originally, I think, from a tennis coach, and the psychology behind, how to get the best out of someone who was a great tennis athlete. But there's a psychology behind it. There's also a psychology behind, how we all interact in our lives, whether it's at home or at work. And it's about the stuff that we're dealing with in the here and now, the issues that we are having in the here and now, not necessarily the there and then, because you go for you go to counselling for that, and I know you've got a background in that as well. Life coaching is about the here and now, so there is a little bit of an overlap. But let's say that someone's going through quite a dilemma at work, maybe working with a client, or they've got issues with stuff within the organization. Sometimes that all needs to come out. Maybe they're bottling it up, maybe they don't know what to do with it, and it's just pent up, and it can lead to chronic stress, and those kind of things need to be released. Now, to have a listening ear and someone who is empathetic and non-judgmental, that's what coaching is about. So it's challenging, questioning the person, so they eventually they'll come up with their own answers and solutions to the dilemmas that they've got, the crossroads that they're at.
See, I've worked with people in different ways. Like there's the formal counselling, well, the model counselling that I follow, which is very creative, and it allows me to do things I wouldn't do. Then there's the ways which come to ancient cultures, which I term shamanism. And they knew more about us. They knew more about the mind than anybody else I know in my studies. But then there's another one which I gained a few years ago called peer mentoring. Now you say here and now. In peer mentoring, you work with them for their goals. You don't set the goals, they set everything. So do you do something like that? I'm trying to get my
see with life coaching, it really is completely about the person in front of you, and they are the one. It's all about them, really. So coaching is different from mentoring, and peer mentoring as well is also can also be about life experience as well, the lived experience of the person, so that you've got that affinity, and that can come into a conversation. With coaching, it's different because it's not normal to share your own experience with someone. So let's say if we go back to the burnout side of things, yes, I've experienced burnout myself, but it doesn't mean that I bring into the conversation, if I'm dealing with someone who's saying, I'm close to burnout, that I talk about my own experience and I mentor them in what I did and how I dealt with it. Yes, I talk about that on LinkedIn where I market what I do,
Hmm.
but the actual conversation with the person themselves is like gold dust because it's about them. It's them talking out loud about what they're experiencing, and just the ability to talk out loud and having time to think about what they're saying and hear themselves talk about it. And of course, I do use the kind of counseling, some of the skills that you learn in counseling, reflecting back and summarizing so that they hear the words that they're using. Then that can be really, really effective. And it becomes effective, Ian, because they then are more likely to take action on the things, the goal setting that you might do because it's coming from them, not from me.
Yeah, well, even in peer mentoring does, but you are referring to Roger's way of working, which I think the reflecting is useful. I
Yeah,
don't,
it's very much Carl Rogers' influence. Yeah, it's and that is the beauty of using it within the homelessness sector setting as well, because the in the homeless charities will basically be very person-centered and strength-based in
mm,
terms of the work that they want to do with a client. Well, how about giving that to the staff themselves as well?
yeah.
Doing some person-centered work with the staff that they might not be getting themselves.
Well, I think I remember the Strathmates only came in about 8, 9 years ago or 10 years ago. And I was a volunteer at a place and I heard about it and I thought, that's brilliant. Why talk about the negative side of somebody all the time? Why not reaffirm their positive side? Because I know myself, and I call myself to my friends. I always say to my friends, I'm arrogant. I have a lot of knowledge. I have what is compared to most people, an amazing memory for facts and stories. Names, forget it. I can't remember names for some reason. I went to sing at the Diorama. A friend of mine was going to perform some headphone theatre, and she asked me to come along. I walk in there. This guy comes up to me and says, "Hello, Ian. How are you?" I couldn't remember who he was, and I'm honest. I said, "I'm sorry. I meet too many people." He told me. Still can't remember who he is, but at least I got a name, which I think is important. But it is about the strength thing, looking at people's positive side. I don't know if you've ever done this exercise. I used to get a lot of clients years ago come to me about self-esteem. So the first thing I start with, I love paper. I'm a writer, so I love paper. I give them 2 sheets of paper. I say, write your positive, what you really like about yourself. Now do another sheet, the negative side. The negative side is usually a couple of sheets of paper, the positive 4 lines. So it showed me what I had to do. Actually, because now I say, look, hold on a minute. You said you're positive being with people, then you said you can't talk. How can you be positive being? We don't look at our positive side, I think, in life. Even me at times.
And you hit the
Uh,
nail on the head there, Ian, because it is about positivity. And in my own experience, I'd run out of positivity in 2021. And here's a fact for you, because you said about facts. Like in a report from last year, at the end of last year, about burnout, 70% of charity leaders were saying that they were concerned about the extent of burnout in their workforce. That's the extent of where the issue is. And the leaders themselves are not exempt from burnout, and I'm testimony to that. So do they put themselves within that category of being concerned for themselves? And I would argue that sometimes they don't have that self-awareness and that self-care that they need to themselves. And you go back to the positivity side that you were talking about. Well, burnout is all about those feelings of energy depletion and exhaustion, of becoming distant from the job that you know, are being paid to do. And then some negativity, even cynicism, kind of drips feed into it. And then you start to leak stress, and that comes across to your workforce. And also reduce professional, you know, the ability to get results, that goes down the drain. And we can't afford to do that, Ian, because you know as well as I do, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. We need to be on the top of our game. Even when the resources aren't there, people are still going in their droves to homelessness charities. And so the staff need to be really well looked after.
Yeah, you once again said the staff have been looked after, but you also we're talking about the persons in charge of the organisation. And if we look at how I imagine it, I've never been in charge of a charity. I don't think people let me. But they've got to think about their staff, about where the organisation. Like to me, maybe you as you have done it, you can correct me. I see them looking at several strands. Where is the organisation going? Do they have the sufficient capital and means to carry on? And then they've got their staff. Now, none of these are above the other, in my eyes. But the problem is it's like, if I take the podcast, for example, in October, I've decided to finish the news one on Fridays.
Okay.
Because it's become comment. It was supposed to be news with comment, but the comment has taken over. I will be replacing it, and it's going to be called the comment.
The comments. Okay, so you're going to be
you're
the commentator.
Yeah, I like simple. I like complicated. I love titles. As a writer, I always love titles. You know, and if you look at my shows, they're not sophisticated titles. The guest show. There is something coming up, although which is got a bit, and that's going to be a more documentary style. I'm not letting other people do that. But I have to think about all this. And then, for me, advertising, which I'm not very good at advertising, home yet. Then raising money. Then looking at the equipment. Then looking at the technical side. Lucky enough, I have a friend of mine who helps me. For no money at all, and I told him if I got money, I'd employ him straight away. His name, I say, ladies and gentlemen, is Neil Salmons. He has one affliction, he supports West Ham. But we can't help that. Yeah, I know. Well, it's like those people support Arsenal, Matt. You haven't met them.
Well, yeah.
But you know, most of it's my decisions all the time. I get feedback from them. Yes, it's valuable to me because I could be blinkered. But when you're a CEO, who do you get feedback from?
So that is really, really important, and that's about the honesty of the person leading the organization. And you are the CEO of your podcasts, so you are getting feedback from other people and you're asking for it. And likewise, the CEO of a charity has to be honest with themselves and get feedback from their staff, their volunteers. They've also got their board of trustees as well. So there are people monitoring. and they'll have their stakeholders as well. So they are constantly getting feedback with the aim of improving things the whole time, and putting that into documents like you like the facts, having your strategies. So all of that is really important in order to drive the organization forward. But you're right, all those things that you are experiencing yourself in running your podcast, you may obviously at a bigger, a higher a level or more complex level, maybe the CEO of the homeless charity, you're going to have those same things. And those are the 3 a.m. Problems that may be keeping them awake at night that need to be dealt with. And if they don't get dealt with, if they don't speak up themselves and say, actually, I've got a few issues myself, rather than trying to be, a superhero with a cape on, then there becomes a problem, and they need to, I think, get the help they need, which is it's just a listening conversation.
Mm.
That's what I do. It sounds simple, but actually within it, there's nuggets of gold that could be the difference between someone leaving their job, not doing a good job, and actually performing and doing right by everybody around them.
Well, it is. No, you say it's not simple, right? When I used to interview people for the magazine, I usually recorded everything. I got a memory, yes, but you used the word that I think is very important: nuggets. The nuggets that you don't hear. I was actually re-listening to the Power Co-production. What it was, it's on my phone. It was on my phone as well. And I was into it. I got to admit, I'm a Doctor Who fan. Big Finish. I've got loads of their recordings on my phone. I was listening, and somehow it beat to that. And I thought, sorry, I'm meeting somebody for lunch. I can't be able to go and take the phone out. I was late. And all of a sudden, something came up I hadn't heard. I was there. Why didn't I hear it? But I have a third new question for you. And I think this is what I experienced, what I'm scared of for myself. I think because I'm aware of it, it won't happen so far. Ego. Where things are going very well, but they're not really going very well because you haven't seen everything. Have you found your clients so far being able to express that? Because it is a big thing.
We all have ego, don't we?
Mm.
Let's face it. And there's a desire, I think, always to do well, to be successful. And, this goes back to our own insecurities. There's not I guarantee there's not a leader of any organization out there who hasn't got their own insecurities, anxieties, self-esteem issues, confidence issues that they have to work on the whole time, and also their ego. And if their ego gets in the way, then it's going to be detrimental to the organization. And we can see it all the time that our egos get in the way. And I think your guest that talked about co-production, perfect example of where egos can get in the way, where you're doing a joint piece of work where everybody in the room, where there shouldn't be any hierarchy in the room, and yet the person with the name tag, the organizational logo, whatever, thinks that they've got, a more power, and they've got to leave that aside, and then work can get done. So yeah, it exists, doesn't it? And I've got an ego that can get in the way, and I know it's got in the way, and I put my hands up to it. And I've got my own insecurities as well. And one of the other things about those insecurities, I'm a big people pleaser, and that got in the way as well in the work that I did, because I thought I was quite often the best person to save a situation. So I did more work than I should have been doing. I should have delegated in a better way, or had the right people around me to delegate and trust them to do it. All those things are conversations that we can have in a confidential room that I have with people who are in that exact same situation. And it's that realization of, well, what am I going to do about it? Because it's sink or swim. And if we go back to the age-old analogy of putting your oxygen mask on first, that's what a CEO has to do, is put the oxygen on first when in the plane. Because if they don't, and the plane goes in a tornado, they're not going to be able to save anybody else. They're not going to be able to save the organization if they're not looking after themselves first.
Yeah, I was lucky, I think, maybe, and maybe unlucky as well. I met this guy who he used one of these workshops called Play World. One was that I decided to become a stand-up, and the improv class and I got a job at a youth club. The improv class the same night, and I missed it. It was my release, so to speak. It also let me think of new ideas. And I saw this advert in Time Out, when Time Out was more a magazine than it is now.
Yeah.
And you speak to somebody, there's some connection with you straight away. And this guy came along. I used to help him out, and then he eventually let me run. It was drama and dance with some chanting. Very new agey, I admit. Sounds, if it wasn't. Came a lot from Native Americans. It came a lot from something called American Play Fair. They do the same thing with thousands of people. And one day, the first time I took a drama game, I did it. Boom, boom. I was quite pleased with myself. Oh, I've done it, haven't I? And he said to me, "How long did you take to explain the game?" And I said, "I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. No, 5 minutes." He said, "You took 10 minutes. How long did the game take?" 5 minutes. So you've got to look at your ego. Yeah, what are you there for? Are you there for the participants? And that I've looked at a lot. You deconstruct your ego. I deconstructed it virtually. Maybe parts of it I haven't replaced that I should have, but I'm pleased I did. But it's when you're working with, like personally, you said about people pleaser, I like people to be happy.
Mm.
And I used to be the members rep coordinator, big title at Cardboard Citizens, because they reckon I did the rep's job better than everybody else. I didn't. I just read the job description. And I would get, over these 7 or 8 years I was at that position. When I get a new load of reps, I say to them, "What do you want to do?" Before they said it, before I told them what the job was. Yeah, everybody's got a reason. Some of them, one guy stood up the election, and I hate people who do this. "I want to pay people back." Another guy said, "I'm going to change everything," but not saying what he's going to change. Like politicians do it all the time. By two people, one person, she came in, she admits her confidence is raised since working with me. Doesn't mean anything to me. That's my job. But she said to me, "I want to be an ambassador." So I said to her, "Go and see a person, one of the staff outside there, showing. Can't you show me?" No, you're a rep now. It's your job." And she was a brilliant ambassador. I wouldn't say when I first met, she's best communicator, well, and she still isn't. But she did brilliant. Because she was given the permission.
Yeah, definitely. And empowering the people around you that you're working with. I mean, that's great. That's the way to do it. And I think that takes a weight off your shoulders as well. And that's just one of the many things that can prevent burnout as well, because the World Health Organization defines burnout as chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. So chronic stress is that build-up of stress, and it hasn't gone away because no one's done anything about it. And you're not successfully managing workplace stress if you're not giving people responsibility, because people thrive on the responsibility. Like you gave that lady, you empowered her to become an ambassador, and that's what she wanted. And yeah, it might take time for them to prove themselves and get excellent at the job that they do. That takes practice, doesn't it?
Yes.
So and the great thing about it as well is, certainly when we're talking about ego again, we do have to deconstruct and say, well, what am I good at? What am I not good at? And if I'm not good at that, and I don't think I'm ever going to be, I might just be okay at it, but if I can get someone else to do it, then who's going to be better than me? Then let them do it. So let them excel at that situation, and that's how an organization can really thrive, I think.
I think there's many ways for this, because then I'll give you another example. Guy, he was actually supports the same team as you, so straight away,
I like him already.
I hate it. I hate him. He thinks we have a connection. He does it in the podcast, say it, because we also went to this stand-up class, but not at the same time. But he came on, he got voted in as a rep. I asked him the same question. And for that hour, because it's an hour sessions, I do with the individuals. Once a month I had 4 reps, or 2 reps, or 3. It's 4 hours of my time. He never said a word. Now, I know it was going through his mind. I felt I knew. He wanted to say the right answer, which everybody wants to say. So for 4 months, that's what was happening. And I was getting frustrated. As you can imagine, how do I get through to this guy that he can say what he wants? So in the end, I thought a crazy idea. We sat down. I threw the pen at him. And he caught it. I said, look, you caught a pen. That means you catch an idea. And still nothing that session. I did the same thing the following session. Then all of a sudden, at the next reps meeting, where it was always quiet, he spoke non-stop. He said, because we ended it. I don't know what I did, honestly. I tried a crazy idea, which is how I'd work with when I was counselling. That's how I do it. I think of crazy ideas. It worked. But it gave him permission to speak.
And that's so important, Ian. And around a room of, when you're working with a team, you'd be able to pick out the people that are very vocal, the people who are quiet and might be a bit more reflective, or don't have the confidence yet to speak. They might be new or just shy and a bit more introverted. Getting that opportunity for everybody to have a say can be really, really useful, can be really positive for any organization. And it's the same with a coaching situation, just as you described there, where the guy didn't talk and come out of his shell until like a few sessions later. That can happen in a coaching situation as well, where the conversation happens, nothing magical happens for a little while, but it may be the 3rd or 4th session that you have with somebody where somehow the penny drops. Something is said, you don't know what's necessarily being said, but it resonates with them. Something that they've said out loud, and it resonates with them, and it may help them to turn a corner. And that's what I love about human interaction.
But I will say they don't work well. I had one woman who she was talking about some sad things, and I said, I'm very sorry to hear that. It says, you know what I'm thinking? That she rejected everything I was thinking. And you've got to accept that. I don't want to present myself as a miracle worker anyway. And I have taken part in what people might call miracles. I've been honoured to be part of it. I know I triggered some things, but I'm only there. But let's go back to the CEOs, because they are under high pressure to perform. Right. That's what I imagine, Matt. You can correct me. They're under high pressure to perform. And like everybody, like ourselves, we must admit we have targets, personal targets. So how do you work with that?
It's what they bring to the table in themselves. So yes, they're under immense pressure. They've signed up for that job, so maybe they're going into a job hopefully with their eyes wide open in terms of what it entails, and it can change and evolve all the time, that job. So let's face it, like in the time that I was working within a homelessness charity, I went through all the years of austerity, and there wasn't much money around, and then suddenly, just like your guest Mike Hayden, and he was saying about the local government, and he was talking about local government and the flavour of the times, I suppose. At that point, homelessness was not on the agenda of the local authorities. They didn't recognise that there was a rough sleeping problem until around 2018. So all those rough sleep accounts that Mike was talking about on your podcast, they didn't have the buy-in of local authorities, and so the myself as a homeless charity leader, I was tearing my hair out saying there's a problem of rough sleeping, but there was no money to go with it, not from the local authority, until 2018, and then suddenly the national government wanted rough sleep accounts like properly recorded. I mean, you may argue, are they accurate? But they became a lot more accurate than in 2018 than they were in 2010. Because suddenly in 2018-19, from my recollection, that's when the MHCLG started saying, here's some money, local authorities, to tackle homelessness. And so it was suddenly within the interest of the local authorities to do a proper rough sleep account if it meant that they were going to get some money to address it.
Well,
so what you had was suddenly a massive increase of, I don't know what the statistics were. It was something like 160% rise in the rough sleeping numbers between from 2010 to 2018. But it wasn't that big an increase. The rough sleeping was always there. It's just that the count got better, and suddenly money was being thrown at the local authorities. Suddenly, in my job, the local authorities were saying, okay, here's some money to tackle homelessness. What are you going to do about it? So it was like over to the homeless charities to say, okay, well, this is what we can do. We can do A, B, and C. And suddenly you had this influx of investments. Well, from going from nothing to something in terms of the budget that you're holding, that in itself is just one issue that the leaders of these homeless charities have. And then you had the pandemic, everyone in, Dame Louise Casey saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. All systems go. Who are the most agile organizations? They're the homeless charities. Well, that's great, but it means that those CEOs suddenly had to go up another notch, another level to manage all of that.
Yeah, just before COVID, I was volunteering at Connections to the Martins in Trafalgar Square, and my volunteering consisted mainly of teaching IT, but also they had what they call their step-up volunteers on interview panels. And because of my experience, I was invited to quite a few of them. But I do remember when COVID happened, every down, I walked in, I thought, this is my life finished. So I like keeping busy.
Yeah.
Lucky enough, somebody came and invited me on a government panel. But I know now, and I want to bring in the CEO of Connections, Pam Orchard, and she's on the mailing list, and to talk about the work they're facing now. Because I would love to go down there again, see what it's like, because I'm sure it's changed totally. The client base has changed.
Client base, so many issues, isn't there, Ian? There's staff retention, recruitment, and retention of staff. Because of the cost of living crisis, can staff actually stay in this sector if it's not well paid? Volunteers that never came back after the pandemic, or I think the statistics show that there is an increase in the number of volunteers, but just a reduction in the hours that they do. But charities are dependent on volunteers.
Yeah.
So you've got all these issues that the managers and the leaders of the organization and the frontline workers are dealing with all the time. And it can lead to massive stress. And that's why, in the workforce in the UK last year, I think it was 20% of people went off sick at some point. That's 1 in 5 people going off sick. And it's those people that I want to get to, where we can improve the situation in terms of how the organisation deals with well-being generally, but also, how are they managing their own self-care, and so that they avoid burnout. And the other issue, Ian, as well, is that the reports show that 35% of the workforce aren't prepared to go to and talk confidentially and seriously with their line manager about the issues that they're really facing. That's where life coaching can come in as well, because you get someone coming in who's independent, who's non-judgmental, and can get to the bottom of things and hopefully allay things. So although there's a cost to coaching, obviously, ultimately the organization is going to win, because they'll have less people going off sick with stress, with burnout symptoms.
This has been very interesting, Matt. Okay, because I didn't know what you did. I know you said we've had talks. I work with CEOs now, and I realize it's bigger than I thought. As and I call myself a healer more than a counselor or a shaman or a healer of people. And I'm good with people. There are times where you need to talk to somebody. I'm good with what I do every day. And I've spoken about this many times. At the end of every day, I sit down on my sofa, the sofa of sleep, as I call it, and I say, what have I learned today? Not what I've done good, what I've done bad, because we're too easy to judge ourselves. My final question is, where do you do this work?
So it's a combination, Ian. A lot of it can be done online. I've got private clients as well. I've got clients who see me locally and will do outside coaching. We'll go for a walk and we'll have the coaching session where we're just walking along. And there's something beautiful about that as well, because you're not necessarily face to face. Yes, you can pick up non-verbal communication, facial expressions and stuff over the internet or face to face in a room. But coaching conversation when you're walking along, that can also be beautiful as well. And then I also I go to charities as well, and I do sessions if they want things done in person as well. So I do some reflective practice sessions as well with groups. because that's also important when getting teams together, so
Mm.
that they're talking about the issues that the whole team is facing, what went well, what didn't go so well, what can we learn from it, and where do we move on from here, so that there's, uh, some, something positive that has come out of a situation that might have been quite difficult. So all those things are uh, things that I'm doing across the spectrum.
Yeah, because when I started my counselling thing, I wanted to be a group worker. I wasn't interested in one-to-one. My excuse was it's too much hard work. Even though you can imagine you've got a group of 6 or 7 or 8, 10, I used to have, you've got to look at every single person and take in what's happening with that group, each individual, which might sound hard, but I never found it hard. But when it's one person for that therapeutic hour, as we call it, that's work.
But
Then I,
you know what, Ian, though, I might disagree with you a little bit, because I feel as though they're doing
yeah,
the work. They're doing the most of the work. The bit that you're doing, or the bit that I'm doing it intense, acute listening. I'm picking up on those nuggets that we were talking before. And maybe sometimes it's just the last thing that they said, just one word or a metaphor that they use,
mm,
and you go into that metaphor that they use, and what did that really mean? Or they may, start scratching their shoulder, and what are they feeling that's causing them to scratch? Where does that come from? And it's all those things that come from a session, which you can do with one-to-one. The beauty of the group work is that the people that are interacting with one another, and they bounce off one another, and I like that as well.
mm. Thank you, Matt. That's me. Now, with your permission, I'll share your email.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, then, and so how they contact you, because the work you're doing is invaluable. A lot of people don't recognize it, I feel, but you might know more than me because I'm not in that field anymore. Because people need support. We all do, even me, and I'm perfect. Remember that.
You are. The only thing against you is you're a Spurs fan, but we can't have,
Well,
we can't have everything in.
look, I'm good looking. I'm a great talker, and I'm a Spurs fan. And if you haven't guessed by now, Matt has the affliction of being an Arsenal fan. For those who don't much about football, there are two teams in North London. Well, there's three, but we say Arsenal and Tottenham, but Arsenal emigrated from Woolwich. So they're migrants. There we are. I'm going to get Nigel Farage to talk about this.
There you go. As you always remind me when we speak to one another. So yeah,
Mm.
people can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
My email is matt@matthattoncoaching.co.uk, and I've got a website which is www.matthattoncoaching.com.
Do me a favor, email me all those details, but also maybe put your profile on LinkedIn in the web. If you look at your website, you can put the I use the technical term URL, and that'd be useful. I'll put all those in the description. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you too, and thanks for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. So that was Matt Hatton. Interesting discussion. He's open. As somebody who does believe in what people call, I'm not into talking therapy, I'm into therapy. It's a type of therapy, but also supports people because we don't realize that we need support. I have a person I mentioned earlier on, gives me great support. I've got somebody else who keeps on saying the work is good, they're interested in that. Now, I believe what I'm doing is valuable, but even then I get doubts. So people like Matt are needed in this world. So, as it's on YouTube now, you see, and you see my good looks. Sorry, I don't sign autographs or send photographs to anybody. I will put down my email below if you want to join my mailing list. The mailing list, the reason I plug it all the time is what I put in the mailing list is more than what I put on this. I put other information. I also have once a month a newsletter that goes out, which says things that are happening. And also I put questions to my people. And there's no charge. Let me state this now. Everything. There is going to be, at some stage, I will bring a second tier, which will be a small nominal charge. But basically, everyone on the mailing list will get they get notification of each single show. I'll call them that. They would then get the email from me saying that, and once a month the newsletter. So I'm going to wish you very well and have a good week.